Hi everyone, this is Jonathan Siboni. I'm the CEO of Luxurynsight. Welcome to our new series of podcasts in partnership with fashionnetwork.com. Today we are very pleased to welcome Olivier Theyskens, an amazing designer who of course we don't present anymore. Olivier won a CFDA at a very young age and then made amazing pieces and collections with Nina Ricci, Theory and Naturally his brand. We're all looking forward to get to know more about the idea that are behind his spirit and magic. So have fun and good podcast.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We're talking to Olivier Theyskens, one of the world's great and influential designers, a young Belgian gentleman who's very kindly agreed to come here and talk to us.
My pleasure.
Let's begin at the very beginning. You're from Brussels, and you went to La Cambre, the great fashion school. When did you first get the idea of being a designer?
Well, I grew up in Brussels.
Yeah.
My mother's French. She's from Normandy.
Oh, wow.
I was always feeling a little bit Frenchy for a Belgian boy. And, well, as far as I remember, I've always been attracted by, beautiful costumes, beautiful gowns that I would see on TV, under an opera or a movie. And I would sketch most of the time, like people dressed up, like couples at a wedding with the guy, with all the canopy, the details and everything. Like very early, at an early age, and little by little, it sort of like drifted to fashion drawings. I think in the mid-80s when I was seeing, sketches.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the sketches of Lacroix, of people like that.
As a teenager?
As a very young teenager, because, and then I start and it was very 80s, quick sketch with one color of pencil. And it was part of the global drawings that I would do over time. One day someone told me, you're going to be a couturier. And I remember when I heard that I understood I could do this as a job when I would be an adult, it's that age when you are asked when you enter school, like, what are you going to do later? And you say astronaut or things like that. I would put immediately couturier.
Already at the age of 12?
Yeah, my first sketches are from 86. Real fashion drawings are 86. And before I have tons of sketches where you would see that I pay attention on the dresses, on the look of people, street styles, people, things like that. I have thousands of these sketches.
You did?
Yeah.
So that's what helped you get accepted to La Cambre?
Actually, when I was a teenager, I didn't really thought I would still go into design. It was connected more with childhood. So when I was a teenager, I was more, all right, I'm going to be a surgeon, or I'm going to eventually be an architect. And when I ended up at La Cambre, actually it was a little bit by mistake.
Really?
Because I wanted to go to the architect school of La Cambre.
Oh, yeah.
And I had no idea that the architect school and the art school, where the fashion department is, are two different buildings in two different areas of the city. So I showed up in the art school, and they were just, registering people for the past examens to accept you for the years. And so I decided to sign and try, and that's how I...
And you got accepted?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And you began then in when you were 19 or something?
No, I was 17.
17, yeah. Very young.
Yeah, I was out of school early, at an early age. I was 17 when I started working at studying at La Cambre, I'm sorry. And
you finished in, 3 years?
It's a 5 years cursus, but I dropped off after 2 years. I left early.
To set up your own?
To keep doing what I was doing, what I wanted to do. When I dropped off, I thought it's going to take 10 to 15 years before I even do a show, And it kind of went very fast because I dropped off in January and...
when you were 19 or 20?
I was 19.
Oh, wow.
And I kept sewing things at home. I used everything I had on hand. And little by little, actually, it sort of accumulated and it made an entire collection. And I was pretty lucky that I tried to go to Hier, the festival.
The festival you applied.
I was refused. So I found another way to show my work on the beach side in Belgium and
On the beach.
on the beach. It was like a show that Etienne Rousseau, Villa Eugénie, you know, they're doing.
He produced.
He produced by the day. Like he was doing this big cigarette show with designers. I had been assisting to the show they did the year before. There was D-Squared and brands like that at the time, and I was accepted to show my work at that show. It probably was during August '97.
And that was your first show.
It was the first time I could show my work
On a runway.
on models, like on a runway, in a
On a real
multi-brand show. And there was Cookie de Salvert who was there.
The great PR man of Paris.
Yeah, and he spotted me and he said, like, I just take everything that looks very summery and I bring it to my showroom. You don't pay a thing,
And you did.
and I did, and that's really the beginning.
And then when did you first show in Paris?
The season after.
Well, 6 months.
So it was like March '98. March '98, the first show in Paris, only with, like with dramatic outfits made of other fabrics that I had on hand, sheets from my Normandy family, bits of lace, antiques. And I was using that show like a visit card. Yeah. I got like following the show. There was a showroom where people would just show up and buyers, and I would say like, "That's just I wanted to show you who I am, and I'm going to get organized for next season to be able to sell my products."
But they started buying anyway.
They wanted, but I was saying no because I had no structure
to make anything.
So I had like Maria Luisa by the day. She took all of his clothes. She immediately did windows just to show. Julie Gillard from Barney's, she was like really begging to get the leather pieces. And she was like, "You didn't sew the leather pieces, you made them in an atelier. Why can't you produce them for us?" And I was like, "No, next season, please, next season."
So even though you started very quickly in the thing, you took it cautiously.
Yes. Yes, because also we were just a few kids, and it was a moment where I was wondering, how will I produce? You were hearing things about designers doing licenses with factories that would produce everything for them, or I was starting also to travel to Italy to visit factories and talk to some people, show them some of the media coverage I had, and just simply ask, "Do you want to help on this project? Would you be okay for sewing 2 tailors here, 1 jacket there?"
Tell me that it was the following year that you suddenly got this worldwide reputation after Madonna wore. It was in '99. Was that when she?
No, in 98.
98 already.
As a matter of fact, she wore
your dress to the Academy Awards.
Yeah, and it was. I think it was probably February '98, before the show. So people had like the word out, and
before
before the first show in Paris.
Oh, before the first show in Paris, that's what you'd done. Yeah, okay, wow.
Yeah. So we that show was the contrary of a fashion disaster, because it was disastrous because people were stuck there was not enough room. People were stuck in the staircase while the show was starting on. I had to convert the backstage into a seating area, so the girls were basically dressing up in front of everybody. It was just very chaotic. But you know that we love that. When something like that happens, it's always like a good thing.
Yeah, that exciting debut that's raw is what everyone looks for. For a guy who created his own brand, like, I can think of few designers who started it in their teens. You know what I mean? There's a lot of designers starting their dress, but very, very few. Counterintuitively, since then, you've gone on to be the creative director of 3 different houses. I mean, 2 quite famous French ones and then an important New York brand. How does that work? It's untypical.
It's, I kind of felt, and already when I was doing my own brand, I already had the feeling like I was reading Harry Potter by the days, and I was having the feeling I had like a similar life in terms of like book by book, it's another chapter, sort of like his life, and I had the same feeling. I was joking about it, and while I was doing my brand and going through the many challenges and crazy things you go through when you initiate such sort of business, I was starting to really dream about having the possibility to work for a more established brand because of the potential it offers to a designer, the facilities to work with a team, and these things that when you don't know them, you sort of like start feeling like, it would be so nice. And you also, like when you're passionate about beautiful fashion, Paris, and all of these things, like you're the guy from Brussels, and you're loving French fashion. I was like looking forward for that, but suddenly, it happened. I had a possibility, and I moved to Paris.
With Rochas, when you were 23?
24.
24,
I did my brand for 5 years, and I moved to Paris when I was 24 to start with.
Did you stop your own brand, or you kept it going then?
I stopped it. You know what happened? I did a summer 2002, which we presented in this crazy season when the world trade collapsed. It was, nerve-breaking for people in New York, obviously, London and Milan, but people showed up in Paris, and so we had like a very intense season. It was great. Following that, I got some little alerts without being aware, like I was still very naive, but I got some alerts like thinking like, we're gonna have some tough days, even if we consider selling less, I might have to talk to a bank to try to get some money because we were just, on the thread of surviving. So we can't accept this plan. And at the same time, the possibility of working in Paris was also the possibility to have some of the people working for me following me.
Yes, you could find positions for them.
Yeah.
As well. You could pay something back in a way.
I mean, I had considered other things, other brands, but I was never really truly sure about that feeling. But when Rochas contacted me, and it was a phone call, back then I was half-time living in Berlin. And I was in Berlin when I got this phone call, so none of my German friends kind of knew the brand. And I didn't really know, but I found out later my mother had a perfume from Rochas, and then a friend in Paris had a book, and I saw lace, elements that were very connected to my own universe, and no fashion department. We had to set up everything from scratch. I felt, okay, I'm very entrepreneurial. It's the job for me, and I'm going to go there.
You have a very specific aesthetic, manages to combine kind of an historic romanticism with quite edgy, modern, faintly rock and roll, futurist clothes. And that kind of reappears in everywhere you go, in different ways. Why do you think it's so strong? What is the origin of it?
Well, I think that clearly a lot of elements in my work, even if sometimes a jacket will be 100% new somehow in its approach, there are elements that feel kind of culturally connected to fashion history or costumes. I've been like loving these imageries as a child already. I've been loving books I would look at the dictionary on the page of costume and I would just watch it over and over again. Like, I've never really studied costume, but I know about it. And I integrate shapes that I feel are nice to watch and to wear, and whether they feel sometimes more ancient. It's funny because when I was answering you right now, I don't know why I was thinking of Game of Thrones. I had no idea why.
Why was I thinking of Game of Thrones?
Somehow it's because I was thinking about it because it's costumes that I have to be new. Because
they have to be
new. They can't look exactly like a Spanish dress from 18th century. They have to be new. And somehow it's something that I have to, like, I will generate often like a new aesthetic, but with components that make you feel it might be old, historical sometimes.
I often think when you look at your clothes, there's a sense of a court, a royal court, or Versailles or Windsor or Naples or wherever. The thing is made in kind of dégradé linen or slightly messed up lace or leather you would expect to see, on a guitar player or something. Yes. That's what I think about yourself. You are, for someone who started so young, still young, you're Generation X, you're not millennial.
No,
Right. Yeah,
no.
you're just before they...
No.
You're born in the late 70s.
I'm born 77.
77. Nowadays, most of the designers of the new generation coming along are nearly obliged to be social media activists.
Yes.
What's your feeling about that, about what role it has to play in Olivier Theyskens' work?
Well, when I start in fashion, obviously, I never felt I would have to produce content. And I was so happy about how the industry builds up, in the end, what you are. You can always produce a campaign eventually.
Yeah.
But some of the great imageries and editorials, they sort of like build it up more my identity than myself sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I think of some of the works from Thomas Schenck with Matthias Vriens, some of what Vogue US did, and like they build up my brand more than I could do myself. And I don't want to say like today we have to be the desperate designers trying to build everything ourselves, you know, imagery and content and what we are like. And I think it's good, but it's so nice to share that and have the support of the industry too, and rely also on the production of outside production as a point of view that is like good for that. Still, I've been frustrated sometimes of how it was presented only through the lens of the media, and felt like I would love to do something to show also what I am also. So I think it's an opportunity. But social media is painful also for the time it requires from
It's painful, yeah, for the amount of time. I remember Dries van Noten once I talked about, you know, him, who maybe is the commercially the most famous of the Belgian.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, he's one of the great ones, but he's also the biggest of these independent 10 or 15 designers who came from Brussels and Antwerp. I remember once saying, like, why didn't he do an ad campaign? You know, he had enough money, you know, he's turning over $50 million or $100 million a year. And he said, think about an ad campaign. Actually, you define yourself by it, and you inevitably you cut off certain people.
Of course.
You know, so in a way, I thought it was nearly more of a risk than a gain.
Yeah, but you get more new one too. You know, you can do the math.
Yes.
You can inspire people who do not really look after you, and then they are stuck seeing an image they really get obsessed by. So.
But is it a concern for yours that younger designers who just sort of grow up, who live their life in social media,
Right.
maybe you don't have as much talent in a way, you know, natural talent?
Well, that is, I think the most important is that at some point they got the clothes reaching in reality people, and obviously the social media is a huge tool for them to have that, but they just need the time to experience their growth in cloth making and learning. Like my first years designing, I was still learning. I remember doing a show in Paris, but showing my first pant, or the first time I used a certain color, a certain material. I had not enough years behind me I still need to learn, like how is a tailored suit built. So even when I see new designers now, I also feel they're discovering something, they're just learning step by step. I can be in a professional world, but still learning.
Do you work with influencers? Do you feel you're obliged to work with?
I do not work with influencers. And sometimes I meet people and I have no clue they actually are. You know, it's not written on the forehead. But
And then you check and you see they have 1.5 million followers or something.
yeah. I mean, if suddenly I see that this Instagram page is suddenly getting a boost, I'm like, okay, something happened. And then I found out, okay, this girl wore something and published it, and obviously it has an impact. But then you get more followers suddenly, and maybe a month after you start losing some, and because they start thinking you are probably that type of brand, and then they get disappointed because I'm not.
Let's throw back to videotape. You did Rochas for about 5 years.
4.
4, until more or less the company that owned it, L'Oreal owned it.
No. Well, the first year I was at Rochas, and I will always remember, actually, Sally Singer. I had like a lunch with her, and she said, do you know that Cosmopolitan Cosmetics, who was a cosmetic group who owned Rochas among Vela...
Who was it? What was the company?
Cosmopolitan Cosmetics.
Yes.
It was like, I think, a German group.
Yeah,
they had Vela, they had Gucci perfumes,
Yeah.
and Rochas, among other things. And they got bought by P&G, Procter & Gamble.
Oh, yeah, sorry, not L'Oreal. What am I saying?
Sally Singer, she told me, do you know that Rochas just, you guys got bought by Procter & Gamble. I had no clue about
You
it.
didn't know.
No. And I was like, okay, great. We're gonna
Is that
be
good
like,
or not?
I was imagining it was perfect, but I had a good experience with them because it was my first opportunity to understand what was mass market in a way, because they were taking care of brands like Gillette. The only thing is that among the many huge Among Us brands they had, we were the only little brand that was doing fashion. And when I say that, we were like 20 employees in fashion. And they were very supportive. They were like, we're never going to not support you until the end of that contract. Like, we're going to support that, but we have no clue how to manage fashion. We have not even one person here who knows what are the best decisions. And we will never be able to keep doing this, which was sad for me because obviously...
Because you knew then there was a deadline.
Yeah, somehow, by the time I was trying to find solutions, I was hoping maybe the brand could be bought by someone else and continue as a house because, I was like very ambitious for the brand. I was like, this is going to be the brand, but it's like among the 5 most important brands of Paris because it has perfumes, history, beauty.
The DNA.
Right.
But in the end, you couldn't.
No, in
the end, they pulled the plug.
Yeah, they stopped it to concentrate on the perfume. And somehow the brand had known that at the death of Marcel Rochas in the 50s, they just kept the perfume. So I was also questioning, is it so important? And eventually, it will run with the perfumes. And they restarted it later. They gave a licensing, I think.
Yes, yeah.
My views were also very conservative, in a way that I thought it had
What
to
way
be
they
like
were conservative?
It had to be like a French house, meaning you have a Parisian headquarters and everything under the same roof.
Yeah. After that, then, when that finished, you took a break for a year or two before you went.
Actually not, because while I knew it was coming to the end of that story, I got reached by Nina Ricci, and I actually was drawing the last show I did for Rochas with. It was that theme of a chimney sweepers with, a lot of very dark collection, but with dresses with sky and birds holding little foulards, little scarves in their beaks. And I just got a call when I was drawing these dresses, and I was like, my God, this is very Ricci. This is the birds. And we did a resort for Rochas, which was July, and dealing my move to Ricci, and I moved to Ricci with 14 of the Rochas employees.
14?
Yeah, and we ended up there in September. So we had a short holiday, and September we were already basically rushing the pre-collection at Ricci. So no holidays for me. I moved from one to the other, from one day to the other.
When did you present the first show?
Pre-collection was probably December or January.
And then your first runway was in
winter, that was shown in March.
In Paris.
Ouais, in the Tuileries.
How did you alter your head from... You didn't really have to.
No, because...
You had moved on already.
When I was doing Rochas, I was also willing to do my brand at some point. I was obviously thinking about it, but also in a way that my girl was a bit less ladylike. She was more cool. She was more, modern and edgier. And so when I considered Ricci, I was like, okay, this is more a girly story. I want to think about it as a paradise for girls. And if I look backwards and I see my work back then, it immediately shows that I was into another type of girl there. And I had a small frustration building up in me, probably because of the road I was taking.
Oh, yeah. So when did you join Ricci? 2008 or something? 9?
Earlier. The first winter was 2007, so I started end of 2006. I was 29.
Oh, okay. And it was already at that stage you were named international designer by the CFDA. When was that?
Yeah, it was in 2006 for the Rochas.
Already? Even before you went to Initial?
Yeah, and I was very naive. I thought that, because of the price, P&G, they're gonna decide to continue. And they didn't.
Do you think fame and acclaim came too early for you?
I don't know, because it might look like that, but my life was more when in all these years, I was very busy, and I was enjoying, obviously, to see that there was a form of recognition and like something going on, but I was in the same time having a very simple life in Brussels, and after in Paris I was always with my friends that welcomed me at their place, and I never really disconnected from this way of living.
Yeah.
I never went big head, driver, whatever.
Private plane.
I was taking the subway when I was going to Ninarichi because I hated the taxi. We were late all the time. That's how I am, and I have this Belgian spirit too.
Indie and simple.
And why not?
Yeah. No. I'm Irish. I'm a bit aware of that myself. Then you went to New York. You went to theory.
Yeah.
That was a big change.
I took a year off.
Yeah.
I really definitely felt I need to experience what is a sabbatic year, and obviously I loved it.
Where did you go? Did you go anywhere or no?
I traveled a lot. Obviously, I found a boyfriend, and then
where
I
did you go?
traveled a lot.
India? No.
I traveled so much.
Like
When I take a sabbatic year, because I take several, I just do move my ticket. Always, the return ticket is always cancelled and postponed, and I just go.
But where did you go?
Well, I remember once I spent a lot of time in Brazil. And like last sabbatical year, I was also again in Brazil, and I moved to Chile. While it was winter in New York, I would just look for having 2 summers a year. I went to Korea and Japan. I traveled as much as I could when I was in my 20s because we never really took a plane. I never took a plane before I was 17.
Really?
Yeah, for a short trip. And I was loving Tintin and these kind of things, and I was like loving David Attenborough, and like I was really dreaming of seeing like other ecosystems and other places in the world, and when I was 20, in my 20s, when I could afford it, I became obsessed with traveling. I was like a travelholic.
Yeah. You moved to New York and you lived a New York life really then for 4 or 5 years, didn't you?
Yeah. I moved to New York. It happened in a very organic way because I wanted to relaunch my brand, and we were in 2010. So I was really like working on a plan, and I wanted to do it slightly more accessible because I was interested to understand how it works, and somehow I met several people in New York, and we went on with Andrew Rosen, who's the CEO, who was back then the CEO of Theory, the brand, and he was like, we should work together because you will understand how that works. We can make like something together, and I got the idea to do a joint venture with the 2 brands, Theyskens Theory.
Yeah.
So I did like a capsule, and the response was very, very positive. It was like Summer 11, and following that, I got offered the job to do the artistic direction of the global brand, plus continuing the capsule of Theyskens Theory, which was like a huge challenge, but a great opportunity that I took.
And commercially it worked very well.
The brand had to be transformed, not too dramatically, but to evolve, and we experienced we doubled our numbers in a matter of 4 years.
Oh, well done.
So it was fascinating for me because my previous artistic direction, I didn't have so much the possibility to work on retail, to work on menswear. Like in that case, I was working on menswear too, and to learn, with a very healthy brand, how all of that works, and it was not like saving someone, it was more like coming in and helping boost it,
Why did you decide to end the relationship?
It was not totally me, it was more, we were conscious from the beginning that I wanted to do my brand. And Andrew is someone very sensitive for being like a CEO. He's extremely sensitive, and after several years we had changed it, and there was something running, and I wasn't like, my brain wasn't used as much as it could be, and he was saying like, if you don't move, you're gonna just get rooted here, and you're gonna do that only that in your life. Like it was true, and I was saying, yeah, you're right, maybe we should. Like we were always adding a year. We were always doing like, okay, let's do one more year. And at some point we were like, yeah, maybe.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Maybe not.
So you returned then to Europe, you reignited your brand. after a break of 10, 12 years?
More. I finished my brand in 2002 and I relaunched it in 2016.
So 14
January 2016.
And since then, you've got a lot of acclaim. The reviews have been good. I loved your Blade Runner.
The last show.
Meets, I would have said Moll Flanders. Moll Flanders is that English term for a romantic restoration. What's your advice to, there's, young people who like to get into fashion, young people want to be designers?
Well, I think every fashion story is different. Like you learn, okay, Armani started having a store and he was probably more than 40 when it started. Like so many different stories, like Saint Laurent Carl and Vivienne Westwood. So I encounter a lot of students because every year I do 1 or 2 juries and I meet with students or I do a talk with them and I have advices for them to be cautious but to follow their guts, to not do something if they don't really feel 100% for, to surround themselves, to think of anyone who can help around them. That's so important to get a team of thinkers with you and some of the things that you might not think when you're a student because you have a feeling everything is about yourself and what you can yourself achieve when actually collective work is a key in this industry and yes, and also think of your balance later. What is really like your satisfaction? Is it like doing an amazing product that just is visible or liking when your mother and sister can actually wear them? Like it's all of these things that they need to feel. And so I talk about that with them many times.
And that's the advice you give?
It's a form of advice. I'm like, take care and don't spend everything too fast. Don't spend anything too quick.
Did you spend what you made? I mean, you must have been reasonably well paid from those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's different when you can bring services to someone. When you're on your own, when you're a student starting, like you don't really measure your needs. I got some support from my family because my grandfather passed when I was young, and some of these things that kept me afloat and kept me independent. I got a very lucky situation of a factory who actually bankrupt. It was a factory doing a lot of products for different brands, and they had bought a lot of things from me and they bankrupt, and I had the chance to get everything that they had, so that they had paid before they bankrupt, and I could actually use that without having to buy them. And these little things, it's very rock and roll. It sounds weird. I speak about that story in the fact that when you're young and you start, think also of maybe your lucky star. Maybe you're gonna have difficulties, but something can happen, which is maybe a type of luck, of situation, good energy surrounding you.
Who are the designers you most admire?
Well, depending on the time, like I've been a great admirer of Saint Laurent or Miuccia, Carl, Vivienne Westwood, even Jean-Paul Gaultier, Montana. What I love is the diversity. I think I love the authenticity. I hate when someone just do a pseudo something. I just like designers who have their voice. Helmut Lang. It came up front from other very successful designers, which I think are doing great, but I'm not admiring so much their world of creativity.
I was chastised for talking too much this morning, and they have to edit, so I'm going to have to cut you off here. But Olivier Theyskens, it's been great talking to you.
My pleasure, anytime.